No, it's a new castle. They just had another castle inside the first one. And that castle's now risen out of the ground. They filled the castle so that it had a better castle inside it.
When I first started watching these old episodes of Voltron, my impression of them was that they were going to be two things. Not great, and pretty much harmless. After the 6th episode of the show featured one of the characters being killed off, I knew in an instant that this could profoundly shake up the foundations of the program as a whole. But I strongly believed that the status quo I had mentioned beforehand would not be one which would subside. But the next episode honestly surprised me, to the point that I can honestly say that one of these two things that I categorized the show under might not be entirely correct. There are various things that change either during this episode or around it to make this somewhat clear. First off, on the American side of things, I think that the dubbing has suddenly got a lot higher in quality. This is the first episode I've seen up to this point where there weren't really any odd moments that clearly weren't translated right, nor any inconsistent scenes obviously made up on the spot by the writers. Whenever a conversation happens, it starts to feel like two people actually having real dialogue, and I get the overall impression that what I'm watching is much more close to the Japanese version, sans a few obvious minor changes. Another big transition is that it seems like we're getting pretty close to being done with big transitions. In the last 2 episodes, we've seen the setting and cast change drastically, but after this, the central cast is going to remain the same for the next 28 years. As far as I'm aware, there's only one main central character who hasn't been properly introduced yet. So now that the program is finally what it wants to be and can stop trying to rebuild itself, it's about time for stories dedicated to exploring certain characters fully one by one. And today's episode is of course dedicated to that of the princess, which I am personally looking forward to, as dated television programs are notoriously great at writing female characters. Episode 7 of Voltron, entitled The Lion Has New Claws, was the first episode where the things that were bad were not funny. In fact, while just episodes before the show had made me be on the floor laughing hysterically, this episode didn't even make me chuckle. It's the first episode where I couldn't see myself making the same errors, and where I couldn't see the ideas being altered to fit a better product. It did more than make me question if my initial thesis had been far from the truth. It made me consider if I'd really be able to get through as many episodes as I had initially planned. To put it simply, while the 6 episodes before this one have been sort of charming in everything that was dated about them, this one is dated in a gross way. So what is it then? Is Allura just an obnoxious, badly written character? It's pretty standard for these shows to have female characters who are just perpetually whiny and incomprehensibly hard to deal with. Well, you'd be surprised to hear that Allura isn't a bad character. She's fine, she isn't anything new or interesting, and she doesn't have much of a consistent personality or set of goals, but we've been used to that up to this point with the other 5 Hawkeye clones that we've also had to deal with. No, the problem isn't the princess herself, it's the gross, crusty chemical reaction that the direction of everything has to her becoming a significant cast member. I am used to sexist undertones in Japanese media. I've read my fair share of shoujo mangas in my time, and I've seen how poor writing for women can so easily affect if I will like the product or drop it entirely. And even in Japanese products that I like, I find the writing for women to often be more than a little bit gross. However, even if I was used to these issues existing in the media, I wasn't prepared for the levels of bad that episode 7 of Voltron would reach. So the episode starts off with a long pan over to the Drill Castle, transitioning to a scene of King Zarkon yelling at Hagar for her failings in the previous episode before she promises that this time she has a trick up her sleeve. This opening is so standard that for a minute or two I was trying to figure out if I'd accidentally started the wrong episode. But I'm at least grateful that they don't linger on it too long this time around. While the townsfolk at the castle sleep, the alarm system starts to go off and the main team goes to investigate. Except for a hunk, who decides to stay in bed.
Is it morning already? Give me 5 more minutes.
The 3 members of the team go to investigate what has happened and discover a mysterious figure looming in the halls. Pidge attacks the shadowed husk, only for them to then discover that it is nothing more than a previous member of the royal entourage who has returned to help out once again.
Wait till I get my hands on you. You think you're tough. You'll pay for this outrage.
Wow, it's a lady.
Don't you young people know about respecting elders? I'm the royal governess.
This is Nanny. She's the worst.
You're nothing but a bunch of hoodlums, attacking helpless people before they can defend themselves.
Well, took almost 7 episodes, but we finally found her. We found the one character that sucks all the fun out of every scene that they're in. The obnoxious imbecile that makes the show so much harder to sit through. May God have mercy on our souls. Nanny is a previous caretaker of the heiress royal family who helped raise Allura and apparently has returned after hearing about the Voltron force being back. In her first episode, she goes on a long spiel about how all the main characters are spoiled children and becomes annoyed when she learns that they are the pilots of the 4 Lions. I was so desperately praying for a reveal that the nanny was a droll spy and that she would be killed off by the end of the episode. But no luck! Apparently the character is going to be in the show pretty consistently until episode 49, where in the Japanese show she is killed off, but in the American show she just mysteriously disappears, of course leaving a giant window open for appearances in sequel media.
Wonderful!
The alarm system again starts going off, and the team realizes this time the problem is coming from the Lion launching control room, where apparently the blue Lion has flown off on its own, despite its pilot being in the Shadow Realm. After a brief moment of worry over the possibility that the Drool have taken control of one of their mecha, Karan comes in exclaiming that the person piloting the ship is none other than Allura herself. Allura apparently is doing her best, but is clearly having a considerable amount of trouble figuring out the controls of the ship, which I don't really get why. I mean, none of the other team members had any problem piloting these things the first time they tried them out. They didn't even have any difficulty transforming it into the full beast, despite there being clear dialogue setting that up as a potential problem. So why does the princess have trouble piloting this one shuttle?
Is it because she's a girl? Is that why you're doing it? Is that why?
Okay, so arguably right now that is a stretch. The real narrative role that she's serving here is that of the newbie who wants to join the team. Painting her as inexperienced helps to make it seem like there's some sort of transition at play. So in the middle of this scene, the nanny comes in and starts threatening the rest of the team with a spear for allowing Allura to do something so reckless.
Why in the world is the princess trying to do your job?
There's 4 of them and 5 ships. What the fuck do you expect them to do, bitch?
Go out there and bring her back, now!
Oh my god, I hate her so much.
I suppose she means well. I guess the princess likes her.
I'd like her too if she'd just leave me alone.
They decide to load onto their own lions to go out and bring her back. By the way, they make sure to milk this stock footage every time they get the chance. The team uses the lions twice in this episode, and they play the entire loading sequence both times.
First, press the red switch on your left side.
I did it.
Yeah, you sure did. You pressed the hell out of that button. Twice even. Which wasn't part of the tutorial given, but I guess you got it anyways.
Fine, you're doing fine.
I'm learning so much about air travel right now. Who knew that it was all this simple? Each Voltron line literally has one button and one lever pulley thing. I feel like the main way that you operate them is just by switching between them at random under the pretense that there isn't much that you could be doing wrong. So Allura safely lands, but she passes out from the stress. Waking up in her bed, she is confronted by Karan, who doesn't want her on the team. Before we start the in-depth analysis of the scene, I want to point out how completely unbelievable it is that Allura can fit all of that hair into a normal-sized helmet. Karan thinks that it's too dangerous for Allura to pilot one of the lions and says that he won't allow her to do so.
The prince's place is in the castle.
Dude, that's like 2 syllables away from being one of the most infamously sexist things that you can possibly say out loud. Allura says that it is her duty to protect her planet and her people, and says that if her place is in the Blue Line, that she will serve that position by her own free will. And she's also all like, I'm basically the highest authority on this planet, thus you don't get to boss me around. And then the nanny comes in, says that Allura needs to learn to not talk back to her elders, and starts spanking her like a prepubescent child. It's a really uncomfortable scene. Mainly because everyone laughs as it happens, and it goes on way longer than it needs to.
Ouch! 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 Stop! I'm not a baby!
In the next scene, Allura talks to the two in private and attempts to get some reason into their minds. Alright, so number one, if you ever do that again, I'll have you both executed. Is that clear?
Now you listen. Our only princess should not take a chance. Let someone else pilot the Blue Lion. In the village near Crown Mountain, there are many possible candidates. Brave, intelligent men.
Holy shit, they went there! I thought they'd steer near that shit but keep a safe distance, but no, they crashed right into that lighthouse. Oh my god! Interesting note, I think that this is one of the first episodes not to have a scene of Galaxy Garrison. Which kinda sucks, because this is the one episode I feel like I would want to see recapped by a bunch of space generals. Without the Blue Lion, forming Voltron is going to be near impossible. They need to search out a new pilot if they wish to survive a Drool attack. The princess herself has volunteered for the task, but not everyone in the castle has been approving of this idea. She has been turned over and spanked. Wait. So the nanny goes off to this far-off city in search of a strong, intelligent man who can pilot the Blue Lion. But just as she reaches the location, it is attacked by a giant Robeast summoned by the witch Hagar.
This makes me so mad!
The way that monster keeps eating those civilians really rustles my jimmies, just a teensy bit.
So the team goes out and tries to kill the Robeast, but with only 4 lions, they don't stand a significant chance against him. Karan runs to the princess to tell her of this, but when she volunteers to go help, he literally ties her up and forces her to stay in her room while her friends die. Holy fuck. People keep telling me that the worst part of the new reboot is that Karan is different. I read that he's basically Sokka from that one episode where he's on cactus juice. But you know what? After this scene, I am looking forwards to seeing this jerk get a lobotomy. Fuck Karan. Karan's an asshole. By the way, I'm pretty sure that whenever we see this Drool General, it's the same animation cells from the first few episodes, just looped over and over again over different backgrounds. While the team is getting their asses handed to them, the space mice chew away at the princess's ropes so she can escape. You know something is wrong when a group of multicolored cartoon lassie mice are the moral high ground of your television program. She breaks loose, changes into her uniform, and comes to save the day. With the Blue Lion present, the team forms Voltron and attacks the Robeast. Once again, we see the machine have completely different powers from anything that we've seen up to this point, which has been happening far too often and makes me confused on what the Voltron Force can and cannot do. So there's a nice sunsetty after the battle scene where the team celebrates a victory and Allura decides that she's going to remain the permanent member of the team against the wishes of Nanny and Karan.
If your father were alive, what do you think he would say?
I mean, he's in the basement, you could go ask him. Seems like he responds to these sorts of questions.
Let's hear it for the princess! Hooray! Hooray!
Fuck, I dropped her!
Episode 7 of Voltron may have been the ultimate turning point for me as an audience member. It was when it first became much harder for me to finish the episode I was watching at the time. It was the first one where I had trouble reconciling me doing this little mini-series at all, and where I thought a lot more about what had led me up to this point. Watching this a second time through, it's not as hard or bad as it had seemed the first time, but I also feel like this isn't the lowest the show is willing or able to go. My impression from other dialogue and setups about Allura is that the more she is featured in the show, the more I will feel like the program's universe is insulting to her as a character and insulting to me as an audience member. For instance, I understand that there is going to be an underlying storyline that involves the Drool wanting to capture Allura to make her a slave, specifically for one of the characters' harem. Just saying that out loud makes me shiver at how gross it is that they would do something like that to these characters. Some people are going to argue that the show isn't condoning these actions or thoughts, but rather that it is trying to address them. But the show is also too comfortable with these ideas, and it's a little bit too okay with lingering on them for long periods of time. Bad writing for women is when the only thing you can have them do or be involved with story-wise is the fact that they are women. If the same storyline can't be done for a man in a similar fashion, and you also only operate on storylines like this, then you're doing something wrong. And if the show is going to keep doing this for adventures from this point on, I think that I've had just about enough. I also feel like I'm getting to the point that I get the gist of what the show was/is about. When other people revisit this show to figure out what Voltron was about, or to bask in nostalgia, I doubt heavily that they move nearly as far into the show as I have. By episode 5, the main ideas for what it is going to be about have easily been dictated already. I'm no longer at an obligation to keep going. But maybe I will. Maybe I just will.